We are going to start in about 30 seconds, so sort yourselves out so we can get through the agenda quickly. Microphones are not loud, speakers are loud. We are going to start in about 24 seconds, so get yourselves sorted out, please. Right. Why are you here? Because. And I'm here all week. And that's quite annoying. Right. So this is a BOF, but all of the Notewell stuff still applies. You are contributing to the IETF if you speak, breathe, twitch, or anything else. If you're unsure what this means, please go and read about it or ask someone and take advice from your companies. Agenda. So the agenda's online and was circulated. We haven't made any changes. We'll come to that in a minute. Please feel free to contribute to the minutes as they're being taken in the Etherpad, and thanks to the couple of people who've said they'll do it. Jabber is live and seems to have a number of people in the room already, and the mailing list is up and running as expected. Remember, this is not a working group, this is a BOF, and we will cover what the purpose of the BOF is in a minute, and our AD will talk to us. Blue sheets are circulating because the room is very full. When the blue sheets reach the back, could you pass them back forwards and keep them circulating, because people have come in and filled gaps. When you speak at the microphone, remember that other people do not know who you are, and you need to say your name slowly and clearly, on which I am Adrian and this is Barbara. We are easily confused. No, I mean we are easily confused, not you are confused as to who we are. Right. It's a fairly hot topic. People have strong views. Please listen to yourself and be civil. Please listen to other people and be civil. Someone may not understand what you're saying. That's your fault, not their fault. Please help them understand. Speakers, please stick to your time limits. I think we're not going to have a problem with that. We have discussion time at the end of the agenda. So maybe when the presenters are speaking, your questions need to be to clarify what they're saying rather than to open up the wide debate. This is our agenda. Does anybody want to bash that agenda, or shall we just run the meeting?
Have the minute takers found the Etherpad yet? Because, okay, just don't want to be alone. I mean, I'm going to try and help also on the minutes a bit, but I need my minute takers to be there for me. Thank you.
I'm also on it, Barbara.
Right, Martin, would you like to say a few words?
Yes. I'll start by saying that you misspelled my name. I'm vigorous, not... Okay? So I have written a few words because otherwise I say silly things on the mic. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being so many here. I'll try to be short. So the main purpose of the BOF is that those that come on the mic, those that will present, please help the room, the chairs, and me understand your needs, because that's on that basis that we will try to uncover work, if any, that the IETF would do. And when I say work, I really mean meaningful work for the industry. We're not here to discuss how we could lose the time of the IESG, the RFC editor, and so on. So second point is a plea to all of you. Oh yeah, I have it here. Focus on requirements. That is, in my view, essential. And focus on them independently of the solution that might or might not fit or satisfy these requirements. And don't use requirements to defend in the background your solution. We won't have any discussion on charter because that's too soon, and that could end up being messy. We are not alone. What do I mean by that? Is that this topic has a ramification in various SDOs, and the more important one being BBF. It is a very important context to integrate, and I have been very clear about that in the first email I've sent on the BCAUSE list, providing you with a liaisons. We'll have a 5-minute talk or 10-minute talks from David to give you more information on that. But it is important that whenever you express your opinions, you integrate that that context. I'll say a word on Barbara's email. Sorry for putting you on the spot, but I guess you did yourself. I told Barbara that I was surprised by your email. Not because of the content, because I'm not here to judge the opinion of one individual or several individuals. But because of the tone, and because she's chair, and because it happened before the BOF. We exchanged a couple of emails, and I consider this sorted out. What Barbara has expressed carries no more weight, but no less weight than any of the opinions you will be expressing today. I want to be very clear on that, both no more and no less. I think that's pretty much it, yeah. The chairs will present you some questions to guide you through the BOF. Please try to answer them as precisely as possible to make it a successful or a productive BOF. Thank you very much.
Everyone okay with that? Don't need any more clarification from the AD? Good. So this slide is just to remind you, this is a BOF and there is an RFC about BOFs. It raises a number of questions that you might want to have in your mind. We will not dwell on these questions. You can go and look at the RFC. But these are questions we will dwell on a little bit. So on the agenda, after our three speakers, we're going to come back to use this slide for open discussion. And we don't need to go through the questions one by one. If one of the questions is something that sticks in your mind, then come to the microphone and talk about that question. Otherwise, we'll find that everybody wanted to talk about the last question, but we won't get to it in time. So this is a trigger to discussion, and the answers to these questions will help the AD understand what to do and what the feeling of the room is. Too many for us to read in the time, and I think we would be better, spend that time better now getting on with the presentations. As I say, we'll come back to this slide afterwards. Oops. How do you make this thing escape?
Are you done?
Yeah.
Just hit this button.
Okay, well, obviously.
Obviously.
So, Liang, if you'd like to wander up.
The blue sheets for the front row. Oh, and other rows. Thank you.
Really able to microphones.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Liang from China Mobile. Today, I'm going to talk about a requirement of the disaggregated BMG in terms of China Mobile view. So, just to give you a background, if you don't know what a BMG is basically the access router for residential users. It's basically the first hop for residential broadband subscribers in China Mobile's network. What we call it in China Mobile the internet network in China Mobile. And China Mobile was a cellular network centric. Yeah, China Mobile was a cellular network centric operator, but we have 150 million residential subscribers. That figure has grown up from about 15 million in 2013 to the end of last year. The figure has grown to 150 million. So that's a huge growth in terms of subscriber subscriber base. And personally, I actually joined China Mobile in 2013 in this home broadband service team. So what we see here is China Mobile has actually distributed the BNG or BRAS equipment to the district level or central office level in a very rapidly growth rate. And we have more than 10,000 deployed BNG devices. And most of our subscribers are based on GPON technology, 95% of them. And the other 5% is not a DSL or anything copper. It's EPON. So mostly 100% are fiber optics. So the challenges for the legacy BMG, we see there are 4 aspects. The first one is management plane. We see the distributed manner deployment manner of BMG has caused many maintenance difficulties. Also, we see the address management has caused a lot of time-consuming maintenance work for our professional companies. It's IPv4 based, so we have inadequate address. And normally what we do is to give advanced planning for the address pool. That pool will be configured to the distributed BNG devices. But we have really poor predictions. As we see, the growth rate is really high of the user base. So we can't actually restore the IP address back to the EMS or BMG management plane. So it's there as is, and a lot of them are wasted there. And the second one is the bucket effect between the session management and the traffic. So, for example, VoIP service is very sensitive, session greedy, where your IPTV is traffic greedy. But the BNG equipment will saturate either with the session management or the traffic forwarding. And we see an unbalanced threshold there. And it's really hard for us to have a unified model for different cases, different BNG deployment scenario, because in China, you have very fluctuated population density in different areas. The third one is the complicated interface between the BNG and the neighboring system, including PPPoE server, including DHCP server, AAA radio server. And last one is when you want to deploy some new service to upgrade your BMG device, you need to configure separately for the distributed BMG where if you have a centralized control plane, most of the configuration or update can be done purely on control plane software. So you have a much better chance to have a easier deployment of your upgrades. So to tackle with these challenges, the idea is really simple. If you have been involved with the BCAUSE mailing list discussion, you will be very familiar with the architecture. We'll basically separate the what we call control plane of Bmg, but it's more or less a managed plane. So we basically separate the control plane and the data plane, where in the centralized control plane, you deal with the session management, you deal with the address management and the policies, where in the user plane, the distributed user plane device, either it is a virtualized function or it is a physical function, deal with the forwarding plane, and deal with the PPPoE forwarding and etc. etc. And in Beijing, we deployed more than 200 user plane Bmg function managed by only one control plane, but this is for redundancy, we deployed 2. So China Mobile has been doing this since 2017, and some standardized work has been carried on here in IETF in RTGWG. So in the trial we carried out last year, we deployed VNF for that's of course for control plane, and for user plane we have 2 versions. One is for the session greedy one, because it's computing greedy. We use common hardware, and we use a software-based solution for that user plane. But for traffic greedy services, where you have more distributed deployment of your Bmg/UP, we use physical dedicated devices. The result shown in the trial, we see a 40% better performance of IP address utilization. And of course, if you have a centralized control plane where you can manage hundreds of your user plane Bmg, you will see a session capacity with a huge growth. And also, we see the subscribe activation rate has been improved by 10 times. And of course, the provisioning of new services are much easier. And one thing to mention that is, if you have a centralized control plane with software solution, you have a better chance to have a simpler, basically you have a simpler exposure capability to deploy even more novel broadband services. So we have supporting partners including Huawei, ZTE, H3C, SensorsNet, and Nokia. And the vendor listed here has also, all of them has participated in either or POC or a trial. So next step, we're going to deploy these distributed or disaggregated Bmg device in this year, and this deployment is commercial deployment. And we will upgrade our legacy Bmg devices in the coming years. We would expect 50% to be upgraded in few years. When we talk about mass commercialized deployment, where we talk about interoperation between different vendors. So that's why we are here in the IETF to discuss the possibility of bringing the standardized work to this interface between the user plane and the control plane of the Bmg. And the progress, there's been ongoing discussion on the mailing list and also in RTGWG. And we have consensus on requirement and use case, and a consensus of proposing a working group. That's why we are here to working on these architecture and the interface details. Thank you very much. That's all from me.
Good, thank you. That's clear to me, but then I've been discussing these slides with you a little bit. Is that clear to the room? Do people hear what that message from one operator was? Well, nobody wants to get up and say it wasn't clear. So good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Back out. It's very important to hit this button.
Okay, hi. Thank you for the slides. So I am presenting this on behalf of Tom and his colleagues from AT&T. I am representing another operator, Deutsche Telekom, Germany, and we are interested in the split and control plane user plane functions also on the BNG. But what we prefer is that, what we prefer is that this disaggregation is open within the standards, within providers, is converged, well, fixed or wireless or mobile networks, and is based on infrastructure, whatever this will be in the future. I suppose more or less software-defined hardware operations. Okay, and we have only 3 slides. So the first slide we want to show. I have something to show. Thank you. Sorry.
Self-driving slides.
There's some slides already.
What was that? What button did you push?
Not used to this. No summary. That was we start with the summary. Okay, we start with the summary. So as you see, there are several carriers. I think China Mobile. China Mobile. That was okay. The operator before also said that we want to find a solution how to provide this control plane user plane split, for instance, especially in this BNG, which is not a central one, but disaggregated or distributed. So we suppose that the infrastructure will be used for, as I already said, wireline, fixed and mobile access based all on the same hardware. So it should support a very low layer like native Ethernet access, and all of them, the 3 types, or even if there are more, better, should use them for, we say, metro Ethernet services. And especially what my background is, the wireless, the mobile part. So we think the convergence between fixed and mobile networks, like it's foreseen for 5G, is a good use case. And at BBF and 3GPP, they are cooperating towards such commonly used infrastructure. And here this split may also work. So what is the infrastructure like? So this I learned this things you can buy and have it ready, working hardware, not much to be done, providing compute resources, storage resources, and also networking, transmission, and additional components to improve for special services which need acceleration or any adaptation. What is we, that is AT&T and also Deutsche Telekom, are working on proof of concepts for that and have prototypes, not so many, at least we have not so many as in China, because we have much less subscribers, but we try to build and prove something up and see this convergence is, well, we talk about that for 20 years or more. This is a slow roll up, not something which happens out of nothing. So we tend to work there slowly, yeah. And what we think that it's on the user plane, that the user plane functions, of course, user plane is where the most traffic is, we already heard, and what the user is interested in, that the traffic is transported to them at different relationships, different service level agreements. Of course, also different costs and prices and regulations also are different in different countries. So therefore, we are not able to do steady change in the user plane. There should be something that's constant and just work and provide the service. Yeah, okay, when this is the deployment next year or after next year, at least we want to have a solution very soon, because operators or we are also under kind of cost pressure and want to have a common converged solution. And then there's a figure how could such a deployment look like, a very rough figure showing different services. All is based on, how to say, merchant silicon infrastructure, which is kind of a network function virtualization infrastructure. So the hardware is used by different software applications to provide different services. Maybe there's routing aggregation, there's layer 2 tunneling and management. But then we have the BNG with user plane and control plane splitted. Perhaps other other entities have also this split, and in future also a 5G control plane function and user plane function, or services providing such functionality should be able, and ideally this should all work on the same hardware, perhaps with same protocols, and above, of course, higher layers are for operation support systems, business support system, and doing the remote user dial-in and anything more. And what may I have forgotten? So, of course, slicing is also an important topic to differentiate between different requirements for different services, which should be all provided of the same infrastructure. Yeah, and of course, there should be some business value in, because otherwise we won't get it flown. So I think, but that was all I want to say. So we are interested in some standardized work, which is usable by as much as applications as possible. And something more? No, that was it, yeah. Thank you.
Question?
Good. So thank you for being willing to stand up. Unsurprisingly, I'm also not surprised by those slides because I've seen them before. Anybody in the room want to ask Dirk for clarification of what he said? We can't hear you unless you use a microphone. He wants to know, what is a pod?
A pod, I think it was a point of delivery or something like this, or something what you can buy and you get it from the rack in the big storehouse, warehouse or something. So I also didn't know these words, but so it means easy to buy and working.
It's Kubernetes pod, isn't it?
Oh, that's, yeah. So let's yeah, maybe if everybody would like to write their own definition of pod and send it to the mailing list. Mine is a family of killer whales.
I like that.
Okay, thank you, Dirk. Oh, there's the magic. And then this one. And I just drifted on. That's good. So Dave Sinicrope has the joy of being a bidirectional liaison manager between IETF and BBF. And it seems to us pretty important to understand what BBF is doing in this space and to inform those of you who are IETF only participants how the BBF works and so on. So thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Adrian. So there wasn't another presentation from a carrier before this? No. Okay. Okay. So as Adrian said, there are, just to be clear, as for this meeting, I am speaking from the role of the IETF liaison manager to Broadband Forum. There is another direction to that. I'm leaving that off the table. So this is the only hat that will be seen today. And if you're wondering what an IETF liaison manager is and does, there's a link off the main IETF.org page that explains the concept of a liaison relationship between the IETF and other SDOs, standards development organizations, and then what a liaison manager does from there. So specifically with regard to disaggregated BNG, the Broadband Forum, and the IETF. So I put this in the form of questions and answers because it's just easier to think about it that way. But that's a bit tiny. Can you make that bigger? It's like, wow.
You should have thought about that before you did.
I used a standard slide template. Oh, pull the mic up. Okay, so not only do we not have video, but we don't have audio either. Okay, we'll try that.
Yeah.
Is that better? Yeah, that's a lot better. Okay, there we go. All right, so on this slide, basically the bottom line message here is, what has BBF been doing on BNGs? That long list of TRs goes back 20-something years that they've been defining the architecture and requirements on broadband network gateways. So chances are if you're using a GPON or a DSL service in the world today, it's running over one of those specifications, box that's using one of those specifications.
Now you want to be small again, right?
Is that the case? Are you done with the eye chart?
I'm done with the eye chart. Yeah, I'm not sure why that. So this is going to be fun.
Okay.
Okay, so that's what BBF has done in the past. What do they have now specifically in the space of disaggregated BNG? There are two projects underway. One is WT, working text is what that stands for. One is specifically on disaggregated BNG. That was started recently in first quarter, and it's all this is coming from the liaisons that you can get to on the liaison statements page. But in a synopsis, they started work on the control plane, user plane separation. They're defining an architecture and the nodal requirements on that project. The second project is working text 458. That one is looking at a very similar related piece of work that redistributes the BNG functions across the 5G core. Question, Ning?
Yeah, I think, can you go back to your previous slide? Can I take one?
Yeah, can you tell us who you are, please?
Yes, sorry, Ning Zhong from Huawei.
Can I get through the rest of the slides and then we can go back and take questions?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. It's just given that they have to scale the page. Don't want to tax the chairs. So, yeah, I shouldn't stand with my back to them either, right? So the next thing is, what is the BBF communicated between, or how have the BBF and IETF communicated back and forth on these topics? And here are the list of liaison statements on the IETF statements pages that record the dialogue. So it started last year, March 15th, with publication of TR 384 and has progressed from there. You'll note that in October, there was a second one that came in that notified IETF of the work that BBF was doing with regard to FMC. And then in December last year, IETF sent a response to both of the ones up here, notifying them of the progress going on in the CUPS drafts. And then there were two successive BBF liaisons that came in, one on January 2nd, one on 7 March. The one on 7 March has the detail of the work. I've tried to paraphrase down what those liaisons are into a paragraph. You can probably imagine how successful that goes. I would encourage people to not only read the synopsis, but also go back and look at the full liaison. The full liaison is really what matters here.
Those are the IETF reference numbers.
These are, yes. So I've been trying to get the statements people to make these visible, but if you look at the last thing in the URL to these, and these are all hot links, but if you look at the last thing in the URL, there's a 4-digit number that's like an index number. The links, this fine print down here, the links, the liaison's supposed to be linked together. The links are broken. I'm still working with the Secretariat on that. So Adrian mentioned before, or that the BBF is a membership organization, as many of the SDOs are in the industry. This means that a company joins the BBF, they pay dues, right? It's not so different from IETF, except that the company is a member as opposed to individual participation. What does that mean, though? It means that the contribution and the work in progress are restricted to members, okay? Except where the organization makes things available, work in progress available by liaison, all right? So the BBF and the IETF have a long history of doing this, as in the IETF with other SDOs has a long history of doing this with membership organizations, where work in progress from the membership organization is liaised to the IETF. The full IETF body can look at it, right? Any feedback, any comments actually get put back in the liaison and sent back to the organization. So that would be how the communication is facilitated across the SDOs from the membership to from the membership org to the IETF. From the IETF back, it's very simple because all of the IETF facilities are open, right? So the other membership organization is usually keeping track of what's going on in the IETF by looking at data tracker and email lists. The key here, though, is mutual participation, okay? Usually there's people on both sides in both organizations that are progressing the work in both organizations. And to date, there's been this is business as usual. Like, for example, I did a little data mining on the BCAUSE list before I got to the mic, except for 2 folks whose affiliation I really can't determine from their email addresses, and one of them's him. Everybody that's been vocal on the list is affiliated with a BBF member company, right? So this mutual participation is definitely possible. So what does it mean in practice? And this is very key. If work is done in the IETF, okay, then work is done in the IETF according to the IETF process on IETF facilities. If work is done in the BBF, work is done in the BBF according to the BBF process on BBF facilities. Okay, and I can't make that more clear. A number of times, not just on this topic, but other topics, people try to send, liaison comments, very technical comments and liaisons. It works much better if people just come to the IETF list and put their comments. Right. In the other direction, if they're member companies, if they belong to member companies, it's easier for them to just go comment within the BBF or within the membership organization. So for work, I already said that. For work in the BBF, those participating who want to participate in the BBF work, okay? Those who are members participate directly, okay? If you're not members, then you can still provide input and comment and feedback on the liaised work via liaison exchange. It's that simple. If you're not members, of course, there's always that option of joining the BBF, but this is not a public service announcement for BBF. And then things like coordination of dates and project scope, dependencies question, et cetera, are usually handled by liaison. So this is one organization formally contacting the other. I can't stress this enough. This is business as usual. What I've mentioned here is nothing new. It's been happening for as long as I've been involved in both groups. Any questions? Ning. Yeah. So now you got to go back to the eye chart.
Again, Ning Zhong from Huawei. This is not a question, just give people maybe more focused background. If you go back to the first, yeah, I think people say, okay, there's a lot of, TR, published standard in BBF for Bmg. But I would highlight that, in my opinion, as far as I know, the TR 384 is the latest and probably the only one dealing with CU separation, right?
TR 384 at this point is the only one dealing with CU separation. Okay. What I was trying to do is provide the background, because there's been a lot of discussion on the list about Bmg requirements. Yeah. And
because that's one to keep
Bmg
focus, because this is also related
the
to
disaggregation is the next step, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Shri Gundavelli, Cisco. Thanks, Dave, for the presentation.
Okay.
So I understand, I think you're overall, explaining the IETF, BBF coordination. It's all fine, but in the context of this work, right, this BOF, are there any specific technical problems? In the last 3 presentations, I'm trying to understand what exactly is the technical problem. In general, it's given that we want to separate control and user plane BNG. I work for my employer, Cisco. We do have, support such schemes. So what I'm trying to understand is what exactly is the standardization aspect here? Is it the control plane to controller to data plane interface? Is that, or are there specific technical problems? Because so far from all of these slides, these are too general and too high level. I'm not able to identify the exact technical problem here.
Okay,
Yeah.
so first
No,
you're
okay, that's
probably
fine.
asking the wrong guy.
Okay, maybe, yeah, sure, it's fine.
I can tell you, and my liaison manager boss is in back of you, by the way. So I failed to mention liaison managers report to the IAB and IAB shepherd. Brian's the IAB shepherd. So what I can tell you, and you're probably going to be dissatisfied at this answer because it's equally high level, is a lot of the questions and materials that are being shown here, I'm seeing extraordinarily similar questions and materials being shown in BBF.
Mm-hmm.
So,
all right, maybe I'll hold my question.
for the
inside.
details, I'll let the other folks.
Sure, thanks.
Thanks. Brian.
Hi, Dave. Thanks a lot. I actually came in here with my my Dave's boss hat on, but great job. This thank you for this presentation.
Brian, who are you, please?
Oh, Brian Trammell.
And what hat are you wearing?
I'm wearing the IAB liaison manager hat. It's just a whole bunch of hats stacked on top of each other. Yeah, so my specific question was, so primarily you would see the interaction between ongoing work in BBF and ongoing work in this working group, if chartered, being with respect to TR-384, or are there other things coming down the pike that would be, I mean, like, so the work here would build on top of a lot of this stuff.
Right.
But that's all well and good. The liaison, no, other way. Where, running us to 415.
So
okay,
that's
good.
the background. The work that would need to be
okay, yep.
coordinated. Should this?
Sorry, I couldn't see that all the way in the back, but yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I apologize for the tiny type. But the work that would be coordinated between the group to give, if the work group is chartered, would be between these 2 projects and their follow-ons.
So that 3Q 2019 date. Can you say something about how to put this in a non-pejorative way?
How real is it?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, how real is it?
We'll
so the
IETF,
right? The IETF has a set of traditions around milestones. We love to hear the sailing sound as they sail past, and maybe sometimes we update them 2 years later. How real is that?
It's a target date, so it's not firm.
Okay,
right.
Cool.
I'll say that. However,
but we're trying to hit that.
We're trying to hit that, and from what I'm seeing in the work being progressed there, that is a very real date.
Okay, so the stuff in here is probably going to have to follow what's going on W459 and then iterate. Is the so anything that happens here that would follow into a update to 459 or to work that's built on top of 459 in BBF would just be another piece of work with another number on it. We'd probably take this offline.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm still not catching that.
So Sanjay Wadhwa, Nokia. So just want to clarify scope of TR-384 that was just mentioned.
Okay.
So TR-384 just defines a concept of a disaggregated BNG. It does not capture requirements, which is why WT459 has been spawned. Just want to clarify.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Dave. Can I ask a question? Because the IETF has sometimes done joint work with other bodies, and sometimes other bodies or the IETF has opened up for participation on a specific topic in a more technical day-by-day way than is allowed by formal liaisons. So, formal liaisons tend to get a bit heavy and everybody has to sign them before they progress. So, sometimes this is like joint interim meetings or our meeting's going to be talking about this. Even if you're not a member, come along, that sort of thing. Does BBF or would BBF possibly entertain that mode of working?
I can't answer that.
Sorry, so you can't give a formal answer. I understand.
No, I can't.
Has it
happened before? Yes, in some cases. Actually, there are projects now that involve non-members.
Right.
But that's a decision to be made.
Yeah. So in this case, the decision would have to be made.
I mean, I could certainly bring the request.
But it's
back.
not a closed door to that.
No. It's not forbidden. Let me say that.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. That's useful information.
And as far as the joint work, you need to be very. All right. So you need to be very careful, right? There's coordination, there's cooperation, there's collaboration. That last one takes legal.
Normally, people get shot for collaborating.
Yes. Especially when there's lawyers involved. Yeah. No, the difference being is coordination is a loose kind of tie to two work items or two pieces of work into two SDOs. Collaboration is much more technically integrated. Cooperation is much more technically integrated. Collaboration implies a joint deliverable. According to joint procedures and joint IPR policies, and so now you see where the lawyers come in, right? And I would recommend, and I usually recommend, staying away from that one. So, yes, anything's possible. Practical is another story.
Dan Drutzer. I think in the context of this discussion, it will be interesting to understand historically how the division of work has been done between IETF and BBF, because I think we can talk all day about how great collaboration can be, but the point is that you have to have some distinct separation of concern. You use the resources with the most knowledge, and you kind of just have touch base. I'd like to understand that, because this should be a good feed into what should be next. It makes no sense for people to do swivel chair, to go to two different meetings or do all sorts of other things, as long as they know exactly what the responsibilities are on both sides. You don't need to be in two places, and you maybe define some interface. I don't know. I just
right. Yeah.
Question: How is that definition of?
So in the work, so I made mention that there's a long history, right, in particular between the routing area and the internet area and the broadband forum. And I need to stress very strongly that past performance is not an indication of like future condition. Okay. So what's happened in the past, has been that, for example, on a number of specs, the broadband forum has defined the architecture and the nodal requirements, the equipment requirements. And as part of the equipment requirements, they actually specify protocol. Now, I don't mean design protocol, I mean specify protocol. Right? So we're going to use RFC XYZ and it's mandatory. Or we're going to use this part of RFC, ABC, and it's optional, right? Where there is, the BBF in general has tended to try to reuse protocol that exists, right? And not define it themselves. However, where they have found gaps, they have certainly defined extensions. They have, in some cases, found a gap so large that they actually needed to define their own protocol. Their TR69 protocol is an example of that. Okay. When we get into data models, that becomes even more so. Where they found gaps in the modeling, they've gone ahead and constituted their own models. And then, in fact, in some cases, they've seen that, like, for example, work in IEEE on 802.1 CFM has been lagging. So they did an interim, and then they're going to come back and sync up with the IEEE model. So the desire to work with those defining the protocols is definitely there. Now, whether that's IETF, and I mean, it's not just IETF, that's IETF, 3GPP, ITU, right? So that's the way things have worked in the past. Now, with this, I mean, it's a body that makes decisions by consensus. So if the consensus is we should work with IETF to define a protocol, that's what'll happen. Or that's what will be attempted. Let me say that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dave. I know you're in the queue. can we transition to the general stuff so that we get a bit of discussion before the end? But you're in the front of the queue, so you can ask any or make any point you want, but not to Dave.
What?
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
For this bit, say who you are. Try to be brief. Don't give a lecture because other people may want to make comments as well. Go for it.
Yeah, Parviz Yagani, Huawei. This is not new. We have done this before many times. SDOs, where BBF is one of them, and 3GPP has a much larger interaction with IETF through the liaison that Dave mentioned. So the requirement from BBF can come here to really lay the foundation for the protocol or protocol extension work. So this is nothing new. It's a well-established process in place. I guess that's the reason that Dave is here to basically follow on the existing process. There's nothing that we are not reinventing the wheel. The process is very, very mature. The only thing is the charter of the future working group has to really focus on the set of requirements that are indeed part of the liaison communication from BBF to IETF. If the BBF, they have a set of core requirements for defining a new protocol or new protocol extension, that makes even IETF look good and make IETF more relevant to the bigger industry. Thank you.
I find it hard to believe that nobody in this room has an opinion on anything. Well, maybe on anything related to the BOF.
I have an opinion. Wim Hendricks, Nokia. Yeah, so I'm mainly going to focus on the questions being asked. I think several operators I requested their requirements because some of the use cases are fixed only. I think some of the use cases are a combination of the two. So you see that it's clear that there is different, let's say, deployment models that are asking for, let's say, similar solution to the problem. So I think in general, we should look at all of these and figure out what is the best way forward to address that. Now, if you look at what work belongs in IETF, I believe if you look to what Dave presented, BBF has the knowledge of what the BNG and a subscriber edge is all about, right? So it's a bit strange what we are doing right now. We are trying to do protocol work, but we don't understand in IETF exactly the use case or what the BNG actually is. If you look I scanned through all the IETF documents, BNG actually doesn't exist in IETF as terminology. I think what you can find is NAS or something like that, right? So as such, I believe that we are better off in general to have and help and focus all our efforts in BBF and make sure we understand exactly the requirements. We look at the protocol which exists, and I think we are not going to discuss the protocol as such right now because I think that's probably contentious. But have the BBF focus on what is available, what is the protocol, and whether they need help to have extensions or not, right? And if so, then they should come to the IETF to help with potential protocol work or not, or potentially do it themselves because they have knowledge, as Dave already was saying, like they have extended existing protocols with information elements, or they have defined new, right? So, and I think that should be the mode of operation, in my view, for this scenario is have the BBF focus on the requirements, and they started that work. And I think there is people who are in a hurry to get a solution as quickly as possible. So I think we are, if we focus all our effort in a single SDO, which would be BBF, I think we are better off to serve the industry and go from there. That's my opinion.
Good, thank you. I want to hear everybody, so 60 seconds each.
Eric Nordmark, I think part of the reason you didn't get much feedback was because you weren't proposing anything. So the question, should something be done in the IETF? It's like, well, no one has said, here's a proposal for, here's what the actual technical content is of this interface between the IETF and the BBF. Does this make sense? If you'd asked that question, you would have gotten people to stand up a lot quicker. This feels extremely nebulous, and from a so there's a technical sort of question about the content. There's also, given that technically it's not well defined, splitting it across two organizations with some cumbersome efforts of working together because of them being a membership organization, doesn't sound like the best approach. My 2 cents.
Jeffrey Down from Juniper. It seems to me that it's clear that this CU separation is needed from everyone's point of view. And there are some differences whether the solution should be fixed access only or converged. There's the difference there. And then there is also where to do the work. I would second Wynn's opinion. That's BBF has an expertise there. And then when they need IETF's help, they can come here. But otherwise, yeah. Thanks.
To my position in the line.
So Sanjay Wadhwa, Nokia. So just continuing what Dave Sinecroft presented, he showed an eye chart of all those TRs. So if you notice, sorry, Dave, if you notice every major transition that has happened on the BNG, BBF has come up with a set of requirements, right? If you look at TR 101 starting way back, ATM to Ethernet, V6 introduction, IPOE sessions, converged policy, on and on and on. And this is again a big architectural change, I would say. So where are those requirements? That's why WT459 has been spawned. So I mean, putting cart before the horse in IETF to me doesn't make sense. At least the requirements need to be provided by BBF where the expertise is, and then protocol can happen anywhere. That's fine.
Greg Mirsky, CT. Okay, I'm surprised that people, one of the co-authors of the requirement documents now says that there is no IETF document. Oh, it's not IETF document, the individual draft with the requirements. No, we have even 2 individual documents, requirements that list requirements, and we do have material that we can work with. Whether it's captured requirements, well, when we start working with them, we'll find out. And I hope that, as Dave pointed out, we have very good cross-pollination between 2 SDOs. We can find the right level of interaction between organizations, formal and informal, to progress it if we decide to do that. So I don't see the problem that IETF doesn't have rich expertise on BNG, because we do have a starting point to work with. What is clear is that saying that, well, we need to wait for some documents to mature and then we can start analyzing it, I don't think that it's the right approach, especially because in the first presentation we were given timeline of operator that is, they have their own timeline.
Okay, point heard. Now the queue has got really long, and you've all got 30 seconds max.
Okay. Very fast. Diego Lopez, Telefónica. First.
And capped. No one else.
Okay. Well, restart. Diego Lopez, Telefónica. I came with my ideas and my arguments and well, I was surprised that Dirk was stealing all of them in his presentation. So in despite of whether we know what a pod is or not, I think that the general problem of addressing how to deal with access nodes and how to decouple control and data planes and how we take advantage of new architectures, or like in general in access, not necessarily a problem of the BNG itself, but in access is something that is quite interesting first, and it fits very well here.
The line is capped.
Dan Drutza, based on what Dave explained about relationship and the collaboration, I truly think that what BBF started is a good model, and they should be able to identify the gaps. And if there are gaps, come back to IETF with the protocol requirements, very specific, very clear, work done. This is not greenfield development. Start the requirements here and blah, blah, blah. It makes a lot of sense to reuse.
Yeah, Ning Zhong from Huawei. I'm a little bit concerned if people claim that, okay, this kind of work should be only done currently here in this organization, or another one have to wait until some concrete outcome here. Because what I clearly see is that there are same group of people contribute both to IETF and BBF. For example, we have a bunch of drafts both from Huawei, ZTE, and Nokia. We have also in BBF organized some conference call to review that IETF draft to help it progress. So also on the liaison, we think that BBF is not blocking IETF to any protocol work. So I think we are in a good cooperation way. So yeah, I can see the energy here. So let's do the work.
Yeah, I need to. We'll have to. I need to make a quick intervention here. Yes, in one of the liaisons, David Sinecrope, IETF liaison manager, BBF. In one of the liaisons from BBF, it says very clearly that the BBF does not object to the IETF continuing work. It needs to be pointed out that no organization should object to any other organization doing anything. That's more cordiality.
Hello, this is Wen from Juniper Networks. I second opinion from Wayne and Sanjay. It's not a greenfield deployment, so new protocol should be work with the existing use case, be more general. And it's timeline-wise, it's very hard to say which organization will come the protocol faster. So it should be, yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Dave Allen Erickson, but I'm speaking wearing the hat of Wireless Wireline Convergence Area Director at Broadband Forum. We're currently working on fixed mobile convergence, which is providing Broadband Forum defined access to the 5G core. We have been doing this in cooperation with 3GPP SA2. The genesis was in 2016 when we had some 10 major operators come to us and ask us specifically to do this. Now, at the moment, we have a pairwise relationship between the Broadband Forum and 3GPP that has been working very well. We are in the middle of doing normative work in the release 16 timeframe. My observation would be, and yes, we are looking at CUPS as applied to the Broadband Forum network and providing support for legacy devices. Our current intention with Working Text 458 was to use PFCP for this, and for at least the work that my working group is doing, it's not in my working group's interest to turn this very nice pairwise relationship into a threesome. And that presents a bit of a conundrum now, because the fact that we want legacy device support as part of perhaps a carrier transition strategy, migration, allow people to bring their own devices to the party, that means we're going to have a lot of duplicated functionality as far as the access-facing aspects are concerned. And I don't know how we avoid getting multiple solutions in the industry to the same problem. That part scares me. I've expressed this on the list. I'm saying this again for the benefit of the people in the room.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Martin, do you need to say something before we close? So if Martin talks quickly, we might take other points. Otherwise, Martin's the last speaker.
New points only, please.
Yeah, because we are over time, and I think the meeting has officially ended. Thank you for your inputs. It's a pity that we didn't schedule enough time to have a longer discussion. But what I've heard, at least, being said across the room or by the different speakers, is that there is a tendency to prefer waiting on BBF to complete its work on requirements before we can reasonably envisage work. I also understand that waiting is not really an option in some cases, but Dave reassured us that the target was real. So So I think we're talking about a 5-month delay before we can have a serious discussion on protocol work or so. Yeah, I'm bad at math.
So, I wouldn't characterize it as delay. I think I noted there's a good number of mutual participants, and so delay doesn't necessarily need to be the order of the day. But yeah.
Okay, fine. Okay, but understood. Let me reflect a bit on that. Discuss with my AD colleagues and get back on the list. Okay? Thank you very much.
So thanks, Martin. I think we're, because we're out of time, we're done. We do still have a mailing list. Martin does read the mailing list, so send your comments there. Blue sheets back to the front, please. Thank you to the minute takers. Thank you, Barbara. Goodbye.